Hello and welcome back to Flint Hills Briar. I'm Gareth. Figured I'd just record a short little video and upload it for the heck of it. I'm out in the back garden enjoying some Cornell and Deal Afternoon Delight, which I guess you would call an American blend. And then primarily, I don't know, I think it has Virginias and maybe some Burley, but has some bit of Latakia, kind of a maple topping that's not very strong, which I like because it lets their tobacco flavors shine through. After I got home from work today, I lubed up the chain on my bicycle, which I washed yesterday. Got the new wheels on it, and I went out for a bike ride. Rode almost 18 miles. I need to get moving on the bike again. Get back in bike shape. Did I say what my pipe was? It's my Savinelli Romalusite 122 bent pot. Guess it's a bent pot. I haven't taken a shower yet, so if I look kind of like I had been sweaty and kind of messy, that's why. But this last weekend, I live in north central Kansas, and oddly enough, we actually have a bicycle event here in Kansas that is known worldwide. It used to be called the Dirty Kanza, and it started out as a 200-mile long gravel bike race in the Flint Hills of Kansas, hence my channel name. And I don't know if I've ever said this, the reason I call my channel Flint Hills Briar is because I grew up in the Flint Hills, although it's the more northern Flint Hills around Manhattan, Kansas. You know, if I would put my phone on a tripod, I wouldn't have to do this one-handed so much. But the Flint Hills are, in my opinion, the premium hilly part of Kansas. The most beautiful part, I think. But so what used to be called the Dirty Kanza, it's now called the Unbound Gravel Race. And it starts and ends in Emporia, Kansas, which is further south in the Flint Hills from Manhattan. They changed the name a few years back. It was originally named after the Kanza Indians. And initially, at least one of their chiefs or somebody said that they were okay with the name because it could kind of have negative connotations as the dirty Indians. But a few years ago, I guess more of the members of the tribe decided that they didn't really like the name, so they the organizers of the race changed the name. So it has expanded. I think the first year it ever was held was in 2006, and there were like 20 or 40 people that rode it that year. So that was like 17 years ago, I think. And this whole gravel riding thing, it's kind of like riding a road bike that's been kind of modified to ride on gravel roads better. So it's not it's not mountain biking, but it's also not really a like your regular road bike, and it's become very popular um, in the cycling world in the last few years. And like, there's even like the Tour de France last few years, they've even been putting small little bits of gravel riding in it, in like one of the stages or something, just because it's becoming so popular. But the Unbound Gravel Race has really become apparently kind of like the premium kind of top tier gravel race, the 200-mile race. There are other gravel races in the United States, and I don't, and I can think of one that's in Italy. It's called Strada Bianchi, and that's in Tuscany, and it goes over a lot of like gravel, limestone gravel roads, like which is pretty similar to what we have in Kansas. The Unbound Gravel Race now has a bunch of different distances. There's like a 100-mile one, there's a 50-mile one, a 25-mile one. There's also a 350-mile one, and that takes a lot of riders probably more than a day, I think, to complete. They're pretty much riding in the middle of the night. But back in 2019, I went and watched the race, the 200-mile Dirty Kansas, as it was called then. And with this race, watching it pretty much means that I went to the start of it, and then there's two kind of like checkpoint towns along the route where the riders can meet like a support person and, fill up their water, get their bike chain cleaned up and relubed, and, get mechanical help if they need it, get more food, take a short break, that sort of thing. So what I did that year is I watched the start in Emporia, then I hopped in my truck, drove up to Alma, Kansas, which was the first of the checkpoints. Watched the kind of first wave of the riders come through, which that year there were a few professional riders that were riding, and one of whom I'd actually met and hung out with. That's kind of a long story, but at a thing in Boulder, Colorado, about a year, I guess not even quite a year before that. It was only about maybe 6 months before. And I watched them roll in, a few more riders, and then I headed to Council Grove, Kansas, which was the second checkpoint, and watched the riders come through there, like the first kind of wave of them. And then I had to leave and head up back to Emporia to catch the finisher coming across the finish line. And really it's a challenge to talk and keep this going. Anyway, I got to the finish line in Emporia, and there was a guy there who I started talking to. Turns out he's the dad of the one professional rider that I had met before. I guess his family came from somewhere in Kansas, although they've lived out in Golden, Colorado, I think, for a long time. And I saw the finisher come across the finish line that year, and his name was Colin Strickland. And it turns out, this is a sad story, but about a year ago, back in May, Colin Strickland, who I guess lives down in Austin, Texas, I believe, he had a girlfriend, and an ex-girlfriend of his named Mo, M-O, that was our nickname. I can't remember her last name. Her first name is Mo, goes with it, but I can't remember what her first name was. Colin Strickland's current girlfriend then apparently murdered his ex-girlfriend, Mo, whatever her last name is, which was sad and unfortunate, to say the least. But anyway, that was the first time I went and watched the Dirty Kansas, and I hadn't, in 2020 it got canceled for obvious COVID reasons. I almost missed it this year. I think last year I knew when it was, but I was working that weekend, so I couldn't go watch it. This year I happened to bump into a friend at the hospital who's a respiratory therapist, and he mentioned that the Unbound Gravel Race was this weekend, and I should just go, He said, like, yeah, you can go, watch the pros roll out in the morning. I wasn't working this weekend, and I asked my wife, the first time I went alone, so I asked my wife if she might like to go watch the race. And I told her that we were going to have to get up, early and go. Well, she didn't realize that by getting up early in the morning to go watch it meant like waking up at like 2 a.m. on Saturday, hitting the road by about 3, because Emporia is about 2 hours away from Salina, and to catch the start, which they rolled out at like 5:50 a.m. But much to my wife's credit, she was game for it. So we rolled out in the dark and drove to Emporia, caught the rollout, the elite. Now they have like an elite category that the pro riders ride in. So watch the men's group roll out. The women's elite group rolled out just after them. And then the big group of all the other amateur 200-mile Unbound Gravel riders rolled out. And then we hopped in the vehicle and drove down to Eureka, Kansas, which was the first checkpoint. And there we hung out for a while, waiting for the riders to show up. And saw the main, there's like a pack of like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 of the elite men's riders. They were the first that came through. And they were on their way shortly thereafter. And we hung out there for, I don't know, a few hours, watching riders come through. Because I could calculate about how long it'd take them to get to each checkpoint. And then we drove to Madison, Kansas, which was north of there, in between there and Emporia, which was the second checkpoint. Watched the first kind of wave of the riders come through and hung out there a little bit, not quite as long, and then drove up to Emporia. And it, like, there was a chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon. It started raining very gently as we hit Emporia. We went downtown to where the finish line was, and it started raining then. And I saw the elite men's finishers come in, and I actually saw the women's 350-mile race finisher came in while we were there. And I also saw the women's elite winner come through. And anyway, it was really raining at the finish line. They were kind of strongly suggesting that folks go indoors somewhere because the weather might get kind of dodgy. It wasn't severe, but there was a chance of hail, which never happened. And so this was about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and we didn't leave until about 6. So we were out, doing race stuff for at least like 12 hours on Saturday. And my wife said that, next year I think she might let me go by myself again. But I think she enjoyed it. I can tell she did. I know that maybe she's not really game to go watch it next year again, but I think she enjoyed it and had a pretty good time. And I really want to get a gravel bike. I have a road bike. But here in Salina, we have tons of gravel roads out in the country that just are begging to be explored. And I got the itch to get a gravel bike when I watched the Dirty Kansas the first time. and I saved some money for a gravel bike, and I just never pulled the trigger on buying one. Then that money eventually turned into part of a down payment on our house. So I was kind of glad I didn't get that bike at that point in time. But I think I'm going to get one here before too long. And I don't know if I can do the 200-mile Unbound Gravel Race. I can do 100 miles on the road. And gravel riding takes more energy to ride. So I do think that with enough training, I probably could do the 100 Unbound Gravel Race. My wife was joking that she wasn't going to help me at the checkpoints, that I'd have to find somebody else to do that. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But and it turns out my friend at the hospital, he didn't say anything about riding the race. He just kind of suggested, like, oh, the Unbound Gravel Race is this weekend. You should go, watch it. Turns out he rode the 200-mile race. He didn't complete it. He got to about mile 140 something and had to abandon because the roads were very muddy in spots. There was because it rained the night before and it had been raining for a few days before also. And about 10 miles into the race, there was a section that was very muddy, and it was just kind of a disaster. A lot of riders, their bikes just got bogged down in the mud, and it was a real mess. They basically had to get off their bikes and walk along the side of the road. This is like a gravel road out in the country. And a lot of that, my friend Mark, he ran into like mud and weather issues and thunderstorms and all that, so that's why he pulled out. But yeah, he didn't even mention he was riding, but so he was in that group that morning that headed out that I didn't even realize. But anyway, that's a little story about this race. It's a big deal in the gravel riding world that happens here in my home state. But anyway, I've really rambled on for quite a while with this story, but I just wanted to shoot a quick little video and get it uploaded. It's kind of share that, and something in my Flint Hills that the part of the state that I don't live in now. I live kind of right next to them, but I love camping in the Flint Hills. They're beautiful. Hiking. There's a place called Conza Prairie, which is a tallgrass prairie reserve, I guess you could call it, that's used as like a research area. That's just south of Manhattan, Kansas. And I like going there. There's some trails you can hike on. You can't bike them, but I enjoy going out there, and it's just good spot to hike in. And so yeah, anyway, that's a little story about the Flint Hills here and the gravel racing scene. But thanks for joining me. I'm Gareth with Mountain Coffee. No, that's my other channel, my outdoors channel. I'm Gareth with Flint Hills Briar. I'll see you next time.